During the early to late 1980s, the United States aided countries in both Eastern Europe as well as Central America. The main objective of the United States was to give assistance to people of communist countries and free them from their unfair leaders. The United States president during this time period increased the military budget significantly, and he was credited for ending the Cold War between the United States and the evil empire. Ronald Wilson Reagan, also known as the Great Communicator for his art in giving speeches to the public, served his presidency from 1981 to 1989. Prior to becoming the president, Ronald was an actor who played several characters in a majority of different films. Ronald Reagan, although older in age, remembered that the Soviet was a main superpower since the beginning of World War II. Joseph Stalin, who during Reagan's administration was no longer a leader for the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, wanted to make the Soviet Union a dominating world power just like Germany during World War II. Stalin then, over a period of time, took control of several Eastern European nations and turned them into communist territories. The United States since then has been trying to avoid war with the Soviet Union while aiding countries taken by the USSR, as well as stopping them from invading more countries in Western Europe. Because Reagan was fairly new to his position, he didn't really know the true power or strength of the Soviet Union. Instead, he based his ideas on the outcome of the Soviets during World War II. He believed that there was one thing that the Soviet Union completely respected, and that was strength. For that reasoning, he started to devise a plan, which has been successful throughout the Cold War and is still being carried on today. Reagan decided that it was time to increase the United States military spending to see the reactions of the Soviet Union. President Reagan spent billions of dollars hoping to prove to the Soviet Union that the United States was number one in military defense and would continue to spend large amounts of money in order to improve their artillery and nuclear weapon supplies. Also, Reagan knew that the Soviet Union was having an economic struggle from oil refining, so he was almost certain that they wouldn't allow a massive amount of spending towards making nuclear weapons during the arms race. Even if they chose to spend a significant amount of money, Reagan knew that they would fall into a Soviet economic crisis, worse than what were in now. Even though Reagan was spending all of this money for military defense and improvement of nuclear weapons, he never wanted to give an order to use these types of weapons. In fact, Reagan strongly disliked nuclear weapons. He wished that the production of such weapons would have never came into existence. Part of the money from military defense went into the construction of SDI, which is short for the Strategic Defense Initiative. The Strategic Defense Initiative was also called Star Wars after the popular movie, which takes place in a fiction galaxy. SDI was supposed to be arranged into an enormous satellite shield that could do one of two things. It could either intercept other countries' missiles, mainly the Soviet Union's, or it could destroy their nuclear weapons once targeted. However, the Star Wars project was eventually let go, and they continued to contribute to the defense of the United States' military. When the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev rose to power in 1985, Reagan, as usual, liked to have a meeting with the new Soviet leader. After several encounters with Gorbachev, he began to realize that he was a different type of leader. Rather than wanting to support the communist system of government or expansion of the Soviet Union, he wanted a political openness in the Soviet Union. Reagan immediately saw this as an opportunity to change the Soviet Union's and the United States' treatment towards each other. He pushed Mikhail into a direction that later led to the fall of communism in the Soviet Union in 1991. Apart from that, Gorbachev and Reagan negotiated a treaty. This treaty was called the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which limited the production of nuclear weapons between the two countries. Now that Reagan had succeeded in changing the Soviet Union with help from Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, he no longer considered them an evil empire. There were several other things that he made Reagan's presidency a success, but ending the arms race against the Soviet Union was the main accomplishment.